April the 21st, 2011, Nantes, Western France. Number 55, Boulevard Robert Schumann. A quiet street, hedges, family homes. For 2 weeks, nobody has seen the family that lives here. The shutters are closed, the mailbox is overflowing. Taped to the door, a note, return the mail to the sender. Neighbors are worried. Relatives have received strange letters. The police have already been inside twice and found nothing. The house is clean, the beds are made. But on this Thursday evening, an investigator decides to look one more time. Not in the house, under it, beneath the terrace, under a fresh layer of concrete. They find them. Eddie and Arthur, Thomas, Anne, Binot, a mother and 4 children. One person is missing. The father, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, 50 years old, an aristocrat raised in an intensely religious family, the perfect neighbor. Before we talk about him, you need to meet them, because this family was real, not a case number. Eugénie Dupont de Ligonnès, 48 years old. Her friends describe a warm, funny, deeply believing woman. She worked as a school assistant at a private Catholic school in Nantes, where she also taught catechism classes. The children there adored her. She sang, she worried about money and told almost no one how bad it had become. Years earlier, writing under a pseudonym on an online health forum, Agnes described a marriage that felt deeply wrong. A husband she called cold, controlling, absent. She stayed for the children, for her faith. Arthur, 20. The eldest, warm-hearted, a little rebellious. He was studying in the Venti south of Nantes and earned his own money working at a pizzeria in the city, and he was the one child not born to Xavier. Edians brought him into the marriage as a baby. Xavier adopted him, gave him the aristocratic name, and friends say the 2 men never truly found each other. Thomas, 18, the musician. He had just started studying music in Angers, an hour away, a gifted piano player. Keep Thomas in mind. His last 3 days are the part of this story that France has never been able to forget. Anne, 16, bright, sporty, fiercely loyal to her friends. After the news broke, her classmates stood in front of the school gate with white roses, because nobody knew what else to do. And Benotti, 13, the baby of the family, a quiet boy with a bicycle and a grin, 5 people with calendars full of plans. And in the first days of April 2011, all 5 calendars simply stopped. Now the father, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès. Even the name is a story. Old French nobility from the south. A family motto, a coat of arms, and by his generation, very little money left behind the title. He grew up in Versailles in a household ruled by his mother, a fervently religious woman who led her own private prayer group and claimed to receive messages from heaven. Former members later described that group as a small world of absolute certainty, sealed off from doubt. People who knew the family say Xavier took 2 things from that house: certainty and appearances. As an adult, he wore both like a tailored suit. Always the gentleman, always the aristocrat. Neighbors in Nantes remember dinner parties. Good wine, his easy charm. One acquaintance later put it in a sentence, investigators kept coming back to Xavier was always right. Even when he was wrong, he was right. Underneath, everything was cracking. His businesses kept failing: a hotline service for salesmen, a guidebook project rating hotels along the roads of America. Because Xavier had one true obsession: the United States, Route 66, motels, diners, the myth of the open road, of starting over with a full tank. Remember that obsession. It returns at the end of this story. By 2010, he was borrowing from friends and not paying it back. He had taken out loan after loan. He had a mistress in Paris. He visited on business trips. She later said he spoke of his marriage as finished, and at home inherited from his father. There was a rifle, a .22 caliber, and then in early 2011, Xavier did something he had never done in his life. He obtained a firearms license. By late March, 2 weeks before the end, he was practicing at a shooting range. If you want to understand why this case haunts France, it is not only the crime, it is the planning and the stories. Because Xavier did not tell one lie, he told a system of lies, each tailored to its audience. To close relatives, he confided an incredible secret. He was not really a businessman. For years, he had worked undercover for an American agency, the DIA. Now his cover was blown, and the family had to vanish into witness protection in the United States. The story came with details, sealed procedures, secrecy, a new life across the Atlantic. To the schools, he wrote something completely different. The family was moving to Australia. Please remove the children from the registers. To others, other versions. Anyone comparing notes would have seen the contradictions within an hour. Nobody compared notes. Charming men with old names are believed. Then the logistics. He sold furniture. He canceled subscriptions and had the mail stopped. And in the days after the family was last seen alive, a series of carefully prepared letters began reaching schools, relatives, and institutions, each one calmly explaining in its own tailored way why no one would hear from the Dupont de Ligonnès family for a very long time. The longest, sent to those closest, ran to several typed pages. It ended with a request that reads differently now. Do not try to contact us. It is for our safety, a neighbor later told reporters. He greeted me that week, completely normal. He even smiled. The stage was set. The audience was calm, and then the lights went out. What exactly happened at number 55 in the first days of April is reconstruction, built from forensics, receipts, and phone records. If Xavier is still alive, he may be the only person who knows exactly how those nights unfolded. Investigators believe that Ligonnès and the children were drugged and attacked while they slept, not all in one night, but over more than one. The precise sequence remains uncertain, and I will not go further than the file does. You don't need it. And they deserve better. But there is one thread in those days that deserves to be told slowly. Thomas. Thomas was in Angers an hour away at his music course. Whatever happened in Nantes in those first April nights, Thomas was not there. He was safe. On Monday, April the 4th, his father came to him. Xavier drove to Angers and took his son out for dinner, just the two of them. The waiters later remembered that father and son barely spoke. Near the end of the meal, Thomas appeared to feel unwell. Then Xavier drove home alone. The next evening, April the 5th, Thomas's phone rang. It was his father again. Bad news, Xavier said. Your mother has had an accident, a fall from her bicycle. You should come home. There was no accident. Thomas took a late evening train from Angers to Nantes. Somewhere on that ride, in the dark between two cities, a teenager sat worrying about his mother, who investigators believe may already have been gone. His father picked him up from the station like any father would. Thomas was the last. And then, for almost a week, the house on Boulevard Robert Schumann kept living. On the outside, Xavier was seen doing errands, carrying bags to the car, eating alone in a nun's restaurant, where the staff noticed nothing. On April the 7th, he walked into Benoit's school, collected a certificate, chatted with the secretary, repeated the story of the move, the work under the terrace, the digging, the lime, the concrete. It was done methodically, 2 meters from the garden fence. The street heard nothing it could later remember. On Monday, April the 11th, Xavier locked the front door of his family home, got into the family Citroën, and drove south. The drive south is the strangest road movie in French criminal history, because for 4 days we can follow much of it on paper. He does not hide. That is the disturbing part. He pays for hotels with his bank card openly, leaving a trail any trainee could follow. He eats alone in roadside restaurants. He sleeps in budget chain hotels. The aristocrat with a coat of arms, checking into plastic rooms behind petrol stations. Staff who were later shown his photo remembered a polite, unremarkable, tired man. And the route itself tells a story. He drives down through the south his family came from, the region of the old Ligonnès name. Investigators argued about it for years. Was this a farewell tour or misdirection? One last story stage for the people who would later retrace it. Thursday, April the 14th, Roquebrune, Sur Argens, a small town in the Var, inland from Fréjus, where red rock hills rise straight out of the pine forest. He checks into a Formula One hotel, €30 a night. At a cash machine in that town, he makes one final withdrawal, €30. It is the last financial trace Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès ever leaves. Friday, April the 15th, mid-afternoon, the hotel's car park camera films him one last time. A man in dark clothes, a sports bag over his shoulder, walking calmly out of the car park. And out of recorded history, the family car stays behind, neatly parked inside it. Investigators later found traces of the journey and indications that the rifle had traveled with him. The bag on the camera image looks heavy. After that, nothing ever again. 6 days later, the terrace in Nantes gives up its secret, and France loses its mind. The manhunt that follows becomes one of the largest in modern French history. Xavier's face is on every front page, every screen. every border post. An international arrest warrant goes out. Helicopters sweep the Var, dog teams work the ravines behind Roquebrune Sur Argens, a vertical maze of red rock caves and dense frap where a body can lie 10 meters from a hiking path and never be found. The official theory forms early, and it is coherent. A man crushed by death and the coming collapse of his double life, who staged a fantasy for his family, ended them. That is the psychology the profiler sketched. Then drove to the landscape of his ancestors and walked into the hills with his rifle. There is one problem with that theory. 15 years of searching, cavers, drones, thermal cameras, volunteers walking grid squares, every cistern, every crevice, every well the gendarmes could reach. No body, not a bone, not a boot, not a rifle, nothing. The VAR does swallow people. Searchers will tell you that honestly. But it rarely swallows them this completely. And so the second theory has never died, that the man who invented a witness protection fairy tale, who ended his paper trail with one last €30 withdrawal, who rehearsed disappearance in letters for weeks, did exactly what he had been rehearsing. What follows is 15 years of ghosts. Let me place the strongest pieces of each theory side by side, because this is where the case becomes a mirror. People see in it what they believe about human beings. The case for the hills. The profile fits what criminologists call a family annihilator, almost to the letter. The staged secret, the protective framing, the farewell tour through family country, the closed accounts, a man settling every ledger. He left his car pointing at a wilderness. Statistically, most such men ended their own lives within days. The case for the long game, no body, despite one of the most intensive searches France has mounted. A man who prepared everything, except, supposedly, his own end. No note, no place chosen to be found. A lifetime of stories about America, and a last camera image that shows a man walking, not a man saying goodbye. Between those two positions, the ghosts multiplied, hundreds upon hundreds of reported sightings on several continents. In 2015, a card reached a journalist claiming to come from Xavier. Its message, in effect, I am still alive. It was never authenticated. A ghost on paper, but it kept the flame burning. In January 2018, gendarmes searched the monastery of Saint Desert after tips that a silent newcomer among the monks resembled him. They left without their man. 2019 Glasgow Airport, Scottish police arrest a French passenger off a flight from Paris. French media explode, Ligonnès arrested. The man is Guy Jawar, a retiree who merely resembled him. He spends one night in custody. Fingerprints and DNA clear him, and he's released the next day. Briefly, the most famous innocent man in Europe. Every few years, the noise dies down, and every few years, something surfaces again. February 2026, Gilles Galou, a former police investigator who once worked the Ligonnès file, publishes the result of years of private reinvestigation. It is his personal conclusion, not an official finding, and it points across the Atlantic. to the country Xavier worshipped, the country of Route 66, the United States. 1 month later, from that very country, something official did arrive. In March 2026, the Sheriff's Office of Brewster County, Texas, a county of desert and border mountains, bigger than some European countries, issued a public appeal in the Ligonnès case. The core of it, a report taken seriously enough to publish that Xavier was possibly seen in 2020 in the remote south of the county, near the Mexican border. A lone European man, with a black Labrador at his side. Let that image sit for a moment. The man who buried the family dogs beside his family. Reported walking an American desert road with a dog again. And let me be precise, because precision is what this case deserves. It is a lead, not proof of life. This file has eaten hundreds of sightings before breakfast. In spring 2025, the Nantes prosecutor had to publicly shoot down viral claims that Xavier had been found in Asia. There was, in his words, no factual, verifiable element behind them. But notice what has changed. The file in Nantes remains open. And for years, the question most investigators asked was, where did he die? Now, in Texas, of all places, an American sheriff is once again asking the other question, where is he? Agnes, Arthur, Thomas, Anne, but not in Nantes. They are not a mystery. They are missed. The white roses in front of Anna's school, the overflowing church at the funeral, where the surviving family sat with one empty space nobody wanted to name. The man who left that empty space was born in January 1961. If he breathes, he is 65 years old now, old enough to be a quiet retiree, young enough to still be anyone's polite new neighbor. So, which story do you believe? The red hills above Roquebrune, Sir Argent's, a rifle, a heavy bag, and ending the scrubland, swallowed, and simply never returned, or the long game, the actor who rehearsed his vanishing in tailored letters, closed his paper trail with a €30 withdrawal, and is watering a garden somewhere under a white Texas sky. An old man with a black dog whose neighbors think he is charming. France has argued about this for 15 years, 3 books, 2 generations of investigators, 1,000 theories. And the terrace on Boulevard Robert Schumann keeps its answer, because the most frightening monster is not the one hiding in the dark. It is the one who smiles at you over the hedge and says, "Good morning. I'm Madame Noir. If this case got under your skin, ring the bell and subscribe, because the next case is already on my desk. Until then, leave the light on."